Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you that are new around here, I'm Sam and I make tip videos and tutorials every week to help you improve your art. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, then please don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon just to make sure that you don't miss out on any future videos. Today we're going to be talking about the 5 biggest mistakes that beginners make, and I certainly did, in colour pencil. So the first mistake is using a blunt pencil. And you can see here that I'm going in, the end of the pencil is really quite blunt, and I'm going in back and forth movements, and you can still see quite a lot of the pigment showing through the colour pencil. It's not really getting into the tooth. And now sharpened the pencil, and you can see that the pigment is so much more intense because the point of the pencil is now able to get into the tooth of the paper. And it's a lot nicer result. You can't see as much of the graininess working in layers going over the same area. And the time when this is really important is when you're going in with detailed work. So for an example, I've taken a small quick sketch of a dog's eye, and you can see that the pencil here is really sharp and going in with the dark sepia, and I'm able to map in very precisely all of the detail around the outer edge of the eye. You can see here the details in the iris. This is when it's most important to get those tiny little details in the eye to really make your drawing pop. So all of these pencils have been sharpened beforehand, and I'm able to go in with lots and lots of layers, getting into the tooth of the paper, and especially important in an eye because it's smooth. You don't want the graininess to show through. You can see I can really go in with a lot of detail and really precisely into the pupil, darkening up just certain areas and not blurring it into the rest of the eye. And now I've got a blunt pencil. Again, it's the dark sepia, and I'm struggling to get that detail and preciseness around the edge of the eye. So I always like to darken up around the edge to begin with, and you can see it's a much more kind of scrappy line. It's not as precise, not as neat, and all of these pencils I'm using now are very blunt. In the tear duct it seemed to be most apparent because I couldn't get all of those little tiny lines in, and all around the edge it was a lot more difficult to be precise with this one. And in with the pupil, you can see there's the blunt pencil and the sharpened with all that extra detail. And the second biggest mistake is scribbling. So going back and forward, up and down, and you can see the very harsh lines, scribbling, and it makes it look a little bit more like a crayon when you're a kid going back and forward. It's very difficult to get rid of those harsh lines afterwards when you've really scribbled and gone a little bit hard. You can see all of those harsh lines going over is not making much difference, just there and all around that area there in that circle. And now I'm going to start with small circles, a very light hand, holding the pencil a little bit further away, and I'm using little oval shapes and trying to keep consistent pressure. So you can see it's a much more even coverage. There's no harsh lines, there's no stop and start points. You can cover an area really consistently. It does take more time, but the result is worth it, definitely. And the third mistake is not working in layers. So here I'm going to go in with about 5 or 6 layers, starting with the lightest one first, going in with a light hand and small circles. So layering down some pigment, but you can still see the tooth and the graininess of the paper showing through. And I'm moving on to the second layer, slightly darker, working in all of the browns. So this is quite useful for drawing fur. So going in with the second layer, building up the pigment. And in with the third layer, another slightly darker pencil. And you can see on the third layer, I'm starting to gradually fill in all of the graininess of the paper, but I'm not flattening the tooth. So it's really important that you don't press too hard because you'll flatten the tooth of the paper and you won't get those layers. And in with the fourth, again, slightly darker brown here. taking my time, working in small circles. There's still some graininess, and layer 5 now, even darker. So you can see the graininess is slowly starting to disappear, and it just means that I can go in with lots and lots of layers. So a good example of this is the fur on this long-haired dog here, this border collie. So I've built up these layers, and sometimes it can take kind of 10, 15 layers. Going in with the black now, the last layer up here, and you can see now that the graininess is almost disappeared. The tooth is not flattened, and I could probably add another 5 or 6 or even 10 layers here because I'm being much more careful. There you go, there's hardly any white showing through now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers here. And you can see there's no graininess, and I'm able to add a lot more layers. So the next example, the next mistake is pushing too hard too soon, and you can see here I'm going in with the lightest pencil. A lot more pigment is being laid down, but I'm flattening the tooth of the paper, which means that layers going forward are going to be a lot more difficult to do. There's a lot more pencil crumbs as well that seem to come away. It's messier, it's harder on your hands. Going in with the second layer, and you can see that actually the pencil layer below is actually lifting up. So there are areas in this pencil now that have got, so you go, the crumbs, it's breaking. There are some areas that are not covering. The pencil's actually lifting up the pencil layer below, and it's a much more uneven result. Layer number 4. It's a lot more uneven. You can see the pencil strokes. It's a lot messier. Layer number 5. The pigment's going down with this one, but not evenly. And layer number 6, look at the smudging, look at the fallout, look at the crumbs. I'm really struggling to get this black pencil down now, and that's the result. Really messy and much harder work to get those layers in. And the 5th mistake is rushing, so not taking your time. Coloured pencils are notoriously slow medium, but that's the beauty of them, because I think it's really important to take a little bit of time out from your busy life, sit down and just really slow down and take your time with these lovely pencils. So you can see I'm going back and forth, I'm adding about 3 layers, and you can see the difference here. So in the top picture, that's about 5 layers, and by the bottom layer, the intensity is so much more. You can really make those drawings pop, add the layers to the fur, make them look a lot more realistic. In with the 3rd layer, look how lovely the layers lay down with all of the different colours here. You can add a lot more depth. It's not flat, it's not dull, and the pigment just really pops. Look at that. It adds really, really nicely over the top of all of the colours. I really hope you enjoyed today's video and got some helpful hints on how to improve your colour pencil work. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video and click that bell icon, and I look forward to seeing you next time.